Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Sam Priestley, and as normal, we're joined by my lovely wife, Emma Priestley.
Hello.
Today we're going to do another episode where I talk about a business I've started and talk you through what was involved in the setup, maybe some of the mistakes we made and what could be done to improve it. And today we're going to be talking about our gin brand, Pipehouse Gin,
Woo.
which is our current business really, and it's one I did with Emma. It's the first business we've done together.
Yep.
So Emma should have some unique insights into how it's gone. And we're working on it at the moment, but it has launched and it is doing quite well. So we first came up with the idea in September 2017. We've always been, for a long time we've been interested in gin, and we lived in Spain for a little bit, where at the time their kind of craft gin game was a lot better than it was here in the UK. They have gin bars everywhere, and they do what we now take for granted, which are those lovely goblets with all the different botanicals in it.
The garnishes, yeah.
Yeah, the garnishes. We saw that starting to come over to the UK, and the sort of gin craze starting to take off. We thought some were interested in. Saw the gin craze starting to take off, and we thought we had a couple of USPs that we could add a sort of a unique angle to the business, even though we didn't really have any experience with making alcohol. We thought that my sort of background in online marketing, and in particular selling on Amazon through Amazon FBA, meant we could kind of leverage that and sell our gin online quite successfully, somewhere that, after doing some market research, didn't look particularly competitive. And also, we had an idea for a type of gin that we thought would be good and the market was missing, which was flavoured gin without the sweetness. We kind of realised that we couldn't compete with other gin producers at making the best classic London dry gin.
Yeah.
Because the people doing that are the best in the game.
Yeah, and I've been doing it for 20, 30 years.
I've been doing it forever, and it's a busy market. Like, why would someone buy our one rather than that? But I thought, particularly from looking at the market research, we saw there was a trend appearing that people wanted flavoured gin. And the only flavoured gin really on the market was very kind of liqueur-y type gin, which is where you make a gin, you get like a normal gin, and then you add sweetness to it. So you add like a rhubarb syrup or something. And those types of gins were getting quite popular. But I personally didn't really like them because they're too sugary. They're very good for getting people into gin, but they're not what I'd call a classic gin. So there we had it. That was our kind of concept, that we wanted to make a range of flavoured gins, which were kind of classy and low sugar and all of that. Bless you.
Thank you.
Without being sugary and sweet. The other reason I thought this was a good idea is because there was another trend taking off at the time, which was the idea of flavoured soft drinks that didn't have added sugar and weren't fizzy.
Yeah.
So that's what all came together, and that was the kind of conception.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Maybe.
That kind of works.
The conception of the idea. So there we were. But at this point, we still had no idea how to make gin. We didn't know whether it was feasible. We didn't know what all the laws around it were.
And we didn't have any suppliers. We didn't have any relationships with anyone that made gin, or bottles, or labels, or
anyone to sell it to.
Yeah, or any customers.
Yeah. So we were starting from kind of like just an idea point of view, which is where every business starts from. So the first step was then just to do loads of research. The initial research focused on how do you make gin? Is this something we could actually do? Or is it like wine where it would take years to grow the grapes and cultivate it? Or whiskey where you want to barrel age it for 15 years or something like that? Turns out gin isn't like that. Gin is can be made very quickly. It's what I describe it as a chef in the kitchen. He goes out and he buys the ingredients, and he's not necessarily growing those ingredients themselves, but he's then combining them to make something really special at the end. Whereas wine, I describe as a bit more like a farmer where the focus is on actually growing the grapes and having a really good terroir and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a really good base product.
Yeah. Gin on the other hand, yeah, gin is not quite like that, which is good for this type of business we were doing, and especially good with the USP that we had.
Well, yeah, it's a lot easier entry point from our point of view.
So there's a few different ways to make gin with different categories. So the simplest one is what we call bathtub gin or compounded gin, which is where you get like a neutral spirit such as vodka, and you put in it your botanicals, and you just kind of leave it to like stew overnight, or for a few days, or for a few weeks, depending on what recipe you've come up with.
Yeah.
There's a few quite popular gins on the market, bathtub gin being one of them, that follow that recipe.
And it makes a nice gin.
It makes a nice gin. Well, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
It does. It's not
purist.
It's not purist, and traditionally they're often worse quality, and I think that's more to do with the ease of making it than it. A lot of people would assume because it's a bathtub gin, it's not going to be very nice, and that's because most bathtub gin isn't very nice because it's made by someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Other type of gin, the next step up is just distilled gin. That's anyone where you take it's a similar starting point. So you get your base white spirit, you then add your botanicals to that, but this time you put it in a giant pot and you kind of heat it up, and it stews. As it heats up, the alcohol, which has a lower boiling point than water, will evaporate first, and then you recondense that water down, and you end up with a clear liquid, which is your gin at the end. At this point, it's very high percentage, so you dilute it down with some pure water. Now, the still gin, you can also then add flavourings after that, and that is what a lot of kind of the bigger name gins do, where it'll be called a distilled gin, but the first process they'll do really easily, and then they'll get just some cheap flavourings that they add afterwards. Particularly if you're seeing someone selling a bottle of gin for £20 or £15, they've cut corners somewhere, and this is often one of the areas. The next step up is the London Dry Gin, which is the type of gin that kind of the top craft gin makers are making. And the only difference between that and a distilled gin is that you're not allowed to add anything after you've distilled the gin. Everything has to be put in with the botanicals into the still. So that's the basics of how you make gin. Next question was, how do you make it legally?
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a different question, because you can't just make it at home. You need certain licenses. There's a lot of legalities around the duty requirements and paying for the taxes basically on the alcohol. I've written a few blog posts on this. The first blog post I wrote, if you just Google Sam Priestley and starting a gin brand episode 1, I sort of outline all the different kind of licenses and stuff that are required. So I'll just run through quickly what we needed here. So at the very bottom end, which you could do without really any licenses at all, was you could find someone to make the gin for you.
So a professional distiller. A
professional distiller, or anyone who's got a license already.
Yep.
Buy the gin off them with all the duty paid already. So that means that you're basically paying another £10 per bottle.
Yep.
Or £8 something plus VAT. Take that, and then you can then send it to a warehouse that has a license to store and sell alcohol, and then sell it online and get them to deliver it. That doesn't need any licenses at all. The next step up, which is kind of the route we took, which is to get a wholesaler's license. It's called the Alcohol Wholesalers Registration Scheme, and that meant that we could then sell to businesses. And then we also got personal alcohol licenses, which allowed us to sell at markets and to get temporary events licenses. We still took the step of finding a distiller, someone who had a distilling license who could make it for us, paying all the duty up front. Then we'd get the gin, but then we can now do wholesaling. We can sell it to businesses, we can sell it on our own website and stuff like that. again, we couldn't sell it directly on our website. We couldn't take an order on the website, pick up the gin, put it in a box and take it down to the post office. We had to find a warehouse company, a fulfillment company, who had a premises license, another type of alcohol license, which allowed them to fulfill online orders, basically, which allowed them to sell gin from that premises. So that was kind of the steps we needed, and that's not too complicated. The alcohol wholesalers registration scheme is free to sign up to. They paid us to visit and went through our business plan with us.
Yeah, which was very scary at the time, but actually going through it, it was fine.
It was fine, and we were much more prepared than
I think they expected.
And I've got, examples of the business plan we used on the website, which you can just copy if you want. It's all quite straightforward. They mainly wanted to see that our supply chain was intact and that we had, we were making sure that at every point the correct alcohol duty was being paid, and there was no chance for kind of illegal alcohol to be slipped into it.
Yeah.
So we just did a due diligence document for that, which again I've got examples of on the website. And then with the personal license, you had to go and do a test, which was like a half-day affair, which I think cost £70 or £80.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a course, like a half-day course with lots of PowerPoint and someone explaining the different rules and things that have gone wrong. And then there was a multiple choice test at the end. It was all very straightforward.
And that was it. They each took about a month or two to sort out. But that's all right, because it took us a lot longer than we thought it would to do the whole process.
Yeah.
As we said, we started in September 2017 and we sold our first bottle of gin in June 2018. So we got the legal ways we were going to do it. We had our idea of how we were going to make it. The next steps were but because of those legal requirements, we needed to find a contract distiller who we could basically give our recipe to, and they would then make the gin for us and sort out that side. And we also needed warehouses, fulfillment partners who could store it. Amazon FBA is an example of that. So we had to sign up to their, basically get approved by them to sell alcohol, which was a bit of a pain, not because it was difficult, but because it just took a long time to get through to anyone who had the power to... Yeah,
the back-end system of Amazon wasn't working very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we needed a warehouse fulfillment option for trade, didn't we?
So we needed it for trade and we needed it for our own website.
Yeah.
And so you then contacted as many different fulfillment companies in the country as you could, asking them, do they have the licenses and for all their fees?
Yeah, so like how much they would charge for pick and pack, how much they would charge for storage, monthly fees, etc., etc.
Yeah. And then you did the same thing with the distillers. You made a list of as many distilleries in the country as you could find, and you contacted all of them.
Yeah.
Again, asking, we had set requirements. We wanted to do small batch.
Yeah.
So we were looking for under 1,000 bottles a go.
Yeah, which was quite difficult.
And we wanted us help with recipe formulation. So we wanted we didn't want to just white label gin they were already selling. We wanted to make our own, which again was another difficulty. Eventually we narrowed it down to a few options. Eventually chose one who we then went to visit. And same with the fulfillment warehouses, we narrowed it down to a few. Eventually found one who we liked the sound of, we liked talking to them, and they had a good price structure.
Yeah.
So with creating the recipe, what we did is we started by doing some compounding of gin ourselves. So this is a bit difficult because you're not allowed to, by law, do anything to alcohol that changes its nature, changes what it is, which is quite a grey area. Like, does that mean you can't make cocktails? Because that changes them. Even if you're doing it in your own house for your own consumption. It definitely means you can't make cocktails and sell them on the street, but doesn't mean you can't make a punch that you serve at a party. So I kind of took that to mean that we could, for our own consumption and using kind of all alcohol paid, duty paid alcohol and that kind of stuff, do some recipe testing ourselves at home, which is what we did. We tried all the different ideas of flavours that we had until we came up with we narrowed it down to a few different flavours, which then we went and we spent some time with our distiller trying out these recipes that we'd come up with on their bigger equipment and working with him to work out how to change the concept that we kind of done in our kitchen into something that we could scale.
Yeah, something commercial.
And do big batches of.
Yeah.
And that's something which I'm sure a lot of other distillers could help you with. And it's quite a fun process as well, isn't it? Trying different things. And we've learned a lot about gin in the last year.
Definitely.
So now we effectively had the point we had our recipe, we had our supply chain pretty much set up. The next step was branding.
Yep.
And branding is what took us a long time. We wanted to work out, what size bottles we wanted, what shape we wanted, what was our look and feel of the label, what was the brand name we were going to have, what was our website going to look like, what was our kind of Instagram theme and all that kind of stuff.
But more importantly, the main strategy for us at this time was that we wanted the branding to be really strong so that customers who hadn't tried our gin would be comfortable to purchase our gin online.
Yeah.
So we wanted it to stand out, wanted to be really clear what the flavours were and what the gin was going to taste like. But we wanted to look good. We wanted people to buy our gin because they wanted to keep it on their shelf and show it off to their friends.
Yeah, definitely. I always thought that it has to look good in the thumbnail. If you're scrolling through Amazon, it's got to jump out at you. And that's something that I think we achieved, but I think we need to up our game on the photography side a bit. I haven't spoken to you about this yet, but I think we should redo our Amazon listings with different photographs. So anyway, with our branding, we had a few different ideas, stuff we wanted to target. One of which was local.
Yeah.
We thought that it would be a good route for us to sell initially would be to local, because that would give us another USP. We could say to them, not only are we flavour without the sweetness, but we're also local when talking to bars and stuff. We wanted to have mass appeal. We didn't want it to be easy to understand, not use too much terminology, obvious what it is online when you're looking online, which kind of spoken about. We wanted it to be low sugar. We wanted that to be clear that they weren't going to get, it wasn't going to be another rhubarb gin that they were getting. It wasn't going to be really sweet, syrupy. We wanted to make it obvious what the flavours were. And we wanted to make it look unique. And we wanted it to be very high end. And high end was important because we were going to have to charge quite a lot of money for it, because every step in the supply chain costs quite a lot. So we've already spoken about how much alcohol duty is. That's already £10 gone. Then you've got to pay for the bottle, you've got to pay for the label, you've got to pay for the actual gin that goes into it, you've got to get the cork, you've got to get the heat seal on that, you've then got to get the box that it goes in, you've then got to have another box that your groups of 6 will go in, you've then got to pay someone to put that all together, you've then got to ship that from there to your warehouse, then at the warehouse you've got to pay someone to store it there, then when you get an order you've got to pay them to package it and put a label on it, then you've got to pay a delivery company to go and deliver it, and then you've got to pay whatever platform you've got to sell from, whether that's Amazon or whatever, a fee for that. Then you've got to pay your payment provider, your bank, a little fee and whatever you're selling it for there. And then you've got to deal with returns, breakages, all that kind of thing. When it comes down to it, craft gin is expensive for a reason. No one's really making that much of a margin out of it. It's just an expensive business. And so, but the consumer is used to being able to go to Tesco's and buy a £20 bottle of gin, generic gin, and we're basically charging double that.
Yeah.
Very close to double that. So had to look high end, had to look craft. So we did that. We spent quite a lot of time thinking about the branding. We contacted a few different design agencies who developed gins that we liked. The quotes we got back were pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
I don't remember how much. Was it like £60,000, £70,000?
80.
Like that? £80,000 just for the design.
Yeah.
Eventually we went the route of designing it ourselves and then hiring a professional to kind of like tweak it. So we came up with a concept and hired a professional to turn that concept into a label, into our logo, into our branding. And we found that on 99 Designs, which is a website where you can hire freelance designers, and instead of costing us tens of thousands of pounds, it cost us a few hundred.
Yeah. But one of our directors is a graphic designer, and she was able to work very closely with this outsourced designer.
Yeah. So she took the lead on that. She was an art teacher in a previous life and now works with us. And we came up with a name. The name took us a while. We narrowed it down to two names. One was Wheelbarrow Gin, which we thought would conjure up this idea of local, flavoured. We could have like a rustic wheelbarrow with the botanical, like the actual flavours that were in the gin growing out of it. Had some ideas there. And then on the other side, we had the name Pipehouse. And the Pipehouse was the first drinking establishment in Tunbridge Wells. We quite liked the name. To Katie, the art teacher, it looked right, how it was written down. And that would be a very different brand. That would be very minimalist. Our logo would be a house made out of pipes. I quite liked it because I like linking imagery to names. You want kind of a dual reason for them to remember it. And if I called it Priestley Gin, they have to remember Priestley.
Yeah.
Whereas calling it Pipehouse with a picture of a house made out of pipes was quite straightforward. And there's some stuff to do with pipes and gin, kind of copper pipes with the still. Yeah, exactly. So there was some stuff we could do there. Went away and thought about it. I did a poll on the blog, and we basically decided that Pipehouse was the way to go.
Yeah.
Bless you. Thank you. And that's the brand we still have today, Pipehouse Gin. And it's available on our website, pipehousegin.com, or on Amazon, if you fancy buying some. And it is delicious. Our first flavour was Earl Grey and Cucumber. We're just about to launch another one, Pink Grapefruit and Thyme. And did really well. So we spent ages. We had to find a company to make our bottles for us. We had to find another company to do the labels. We then had to make sure the supply chain all worked together. And that whole process ended up taking quite a long time. So we got our first batch, our first 250 bottles done at the beginning of June. And then in June, we had our launch party. We had a load of markets that we did. We did a big push where we spoke to loads of bars and stuff like that. We did a big press push. We invited loads of photographers and local newspaper editors and stuff like that to our launch event. And we basically tried to hit the local area with a bit of an explosion. And the plan was we would get those initial interest and then we drive them online. So they'd buy online, and then that would drive our rankings and our reviews on Amazon, which would then lead to kind of national sales. Didn't quite work out like that, but we were behind schedule and we actually had no stock online ready to be bought. We only had the stock that was in our garage ready to be sold at the markets. But didn't really matter because we sold out pretty quickly. We sold almost 500 bottles, 400 and something bottles in that first month.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah. People in Tunbridge Wells liked gin.
And it's just been going on like that. We've been doing more markets, we've been working on new flavours, we've been working on online, we've been working on new products, other things we can do. But that's kind of it. That's how you start a brand of gin. So let's go back through it quite briefly. There's all the resources on my website. You can go to saturnpriestley.com to find out. And I blogged about this as we were doing it. So you actually get a better idea reading that about what the thought process was, because we're looking back now with rose tinted glasses. There were loads of issues we ran into, and you can see the frustration in some of my posts, because I start off expecting it only to take like 3 months when it actually takes 9 months to create. You can see I was getting a bit angsty. But yeah, so the process was, work out how to make gin, come up with a USP. You don't just make it any other type of gin. You need to have something different, something unique, a reason why people will buy it. Sort out the legals. On the website, I've got all the different legal stuff you need, and some different options you can take there. Once you've got an idea of that, you can then start looking for partners to work with. Are you going to be making your own gin at home, which you want to sell? In which case, you need very different. You need a lot more. There's a lot more red tape you need to get through. If you're going to work with a distillery, start contacting them, talk to local people, think about how you're going to sell it. Are you just going to be doing markets local to business? In which case, maybe just using your garage is fine. If you're thinking about online or delivering trade orders yourself, then you're probably going to need some sort of warehouse and fulfillment solution there. And that's kind of it. Anything to add, Emma?
Well, I mean, there's just so many different things you can talk about the gin, like from a marketing point of view. But
there's loads of stuff from a marketing point of view. We talk about quite a bit about marketing in some of the other blog posts.
Yeah.
There's one podcast called How to Get Customers for Your Business, which I recommend listening to. We get quite in depth into marketing on that. There's loads of stuff that went wrong with the gin that we could talk about.
Yeah.
Like we forgot to get boxes to put it in.
Yeah.
That was one of the things we messed up on. And then when we did get boxes, our gin didn't fit in it.
Yeah.
Like they were rubbing against each other, and our first batch of labels went wrong, and we had about a third of the gin we couldn't sell.
Yeah, because the labels weren't coated properly.
Were bad, and we still have a few bottles that we've slowly been serving them for gin and tonics at markets and stuff like that, or send them at a slight discount to people who don't mind about.
Yeah, it hasn't been a complete waste.
Has it? But that day when we got back with our box, because we went to pick up all the boxes of gin took 2 cars to fill it up. We drove it back, got to the garage, started opening them up, getting each bottle out, and it was like, oh. And then I remember the first box we opened, all 6 bottles were like unsellable. I like almost cried.
Well, yeah, I think you and Katie did, didn't you?
I was not happy, but we got round there and we ended up sorting that out with the labels, and now our labels are all fine, and you can dip them in water and rub them with a flannel or something, and they won't smudge at all. They're perfect. We had loads of things like that. One of the problems we had recently is delivering crates of gin to businesses. The delivery companies just seem to chuck them around. They're labelled as fragile, glass inside, and these are really premium bottles.
Yeah, they're very thick.
They're very thick, but yet we still manage to get bottles broken. And if one bottle breaks inside a box of 6, that's all the 6, like unsellable at that point. So we've been having those issues. There's just loads of little things that, like, it's always harder than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
But, like, none of the problems are ones we can't solve, and we've managed to get over all of them. And one of the nice things about starting a business quite cheaply, like, our original plan was only to spend £10,000 on it. We ended up spending 12,000 for that first batch, and then as that was selling well, we put another £4,000 in, so bringing the investment up to 16,000 in order to just basically pay for all that gin up front. And that meant that we never had that much on the line. If we'd went out and got a loan for £100,000 and we'd gone with a distillery who had a minimum order of 5,000 bottles, and then a third of those bottles had been unsellable, that would have bankrupted us, because that would have been like, what do you do then? So starting small definitely helped, and it's definitely something I recommend. Generally, it wasn't that difficult a business. If you listen to one of the other episodes is on how to start a coffee shop. Like, as businesses go, the coffee shop was 1,000,000 times harder in terms of all the stuff that was required to do it.
Well, the nice thing about having a gin business is it's very social.
Yeah.
So
It's a fun business.
Meeting the customers, whether that's a B2C or B2B, like a bar or restaurant, it's an easy conversation. It's fun, and it's quite an easy sell. Lots of people like gin, and if they don't like drinking it themselves, they're happy to buy it as a present for someone.
It's worth saying we did come up with our flavour is unique and has done very well at competitions and at blind taste testing. In our first, we came second in a international competition for best flavoured gin in the world, which is ridiculous considering we'd only just launched. And so we were selling something unique that no one had tried before, which is a much easier sell than saying, have this London Dry, what makes it different, and having to come up with a story behind that. And you can do so. Chapel Down. They are a vineyard. They're selling gin. It's doing well. Their storyline is it is made by the first cut of their Bacchus grapes, the stuff that they can't use for the wine. They will then distill into a vodka basically, which they then use as the base for their gin. That's their story, but they're doing a classic London Dry, and it's selling well. They're doing really well because of that story behind it. A lot of companies I know use it kind of like waste for their base alcohol. It's kind of all the stuff which farms were going to throw out that they couldn't sell. They'll take it all, distill it up, turn it into a pure spirit, turn that into gin at the end of it. So there is a lot you could do with gin. There's also loads you can do with the flavours. Earl Grey and cucumber, that's an unusual flavour. Pink grapefruit thyme, that's an unusual flavour, something that other people haven't done before. So there is a lot you can do. Or you could do something completely different. You could do a flavoured vodka. You could do a vodka that are made in quite similar ways. You can do something non-alcoholic. It's obviously quite popular at the moment. I think, it's a good business to be doing. And it's one that... I don't know whether my business is getting better in the idea for them, or if we're just getting better at selling businesses, because this one is going quite well, and I'm pretty pleased with it.
Yeah.
And on that note, I say good night.
Bye.